I made a decision a while ago not to retire anytime soon, and it may be a good time to think again for you as well if you're on the verge of stopping work. In this video I'm going to give you the 5 reasons why this is the perfect time not to retire. Number 1, let's start with an obvious and pretty negative one. Frankly, there are more interesting and positive ones coming, but let's be realistic here. So, number 1, we all need to do the sums that tell us what assets we'll need to have to generate income after we stop work. That calculation is now much more tricky than it was even a few years ago. Now you might be a mathematical genius, or you might employ a genius as a financial advisor, but nobody can remove multiple factors that create massive uncertainty. To cherry pick a few, let's start with the old favourite of inflation, for example. Here in the UK we've seen a real spike in the inflation rate in the last year or two, and it's possibly higher here than in many industrialised countries, but we aren't alone. All countries have seen some inflation. Just assuming a flat inflation rate when doing your sums, like we've been able to do for the last decade or so, can't be a safe bet like it was in the past. Then there's the fact that this year there happened to be a huge number of elections happening around the world. The wrong result for the markets in the US, for example, and notice I'm not saying what the wrong result would be, can change the value of your savings. There are others too, like the fact that we're in a period of huge change as the impact of AI starts to percolate ever further through the commercial world. As these changes happen, it introduces a level of volatility in stock prices that can easily see your savings get eroded significantly if you're unlucky. Here in the UK, stocks also have the extra fun of negotiating the impact of Brexit as well. Then there's the unknowable impact of increases to our own life expectancy. These days, if you don't have at least 30 years worth of income producing capital, you can easily run scenarios where you actually run out of savings right at the time you reach the point where you need it most. I come from a pretty long-lived family, and my dad died aged 93. His dad died aged 82. If I don't plan to live to 100, it feels like I might be making a mistake. So, overall financial uncertainty is my first reason. It's a negative and nobody wants it. But it's not all bad news. Let's look at the retirement question from a different perspective, and let's call it number 2. When savings pots like pensions were first becoming universal, let's say at the end of the Second World War, the average life expectancy in the industrialised world was around 75. Now we're looking at 90 plus for a significant percentage of the people retiring in the next 5 years. But that negative when looking at pension pots is also a massive benefit at the same time. When you get to normal retirement age these days, a combination of better healthcare, diet and medical knowledge means you're pretty fit normally. It means that if you want, physical ailments aren't going to stop you from earning a living. So, if you stop being productive immediately when you could continue, you're effectively throwing potential earnings away. This leads us on to number 3. The digital world today has created a huge market for many things, not the least of which are knowledge and experience, both of which those of us moving into the later stages of our working lives have in bucket loads. There are almost an infinite number of ways in which your skills, no matter what they are, can still be put to good use. As you can see from this example in front of you, if you can talk, you can be listened to all over the world. For example, I appear to have something of a following in India, which is great. The moats and barriers to entry that used to exist only a few years ago have dropped away in many cases. It's now so easy without any real IT skill to produce properly professional work and services and sell them online. Here's another example. I owned a franchise operation a few years ago, and I learned a hell of a lot, much of which may not have been obvious to people considering buying into that business model as a franchisee. So I wrote a book capturing all I knew. I got it proofread and formatted in India again, and then I created an ebook and put it on sale on Amazon. Then I had a couple of hard copies printed as well. The total cost to me of creating this book was about £50. I won't ever lose money on it, as each individual order takes nothing to fulfill in the case of ebooks, and because hard copies only get printed when an order has been paid for, they only ever make a profit. I don't have to carry any stock, and when I want to, I can use this digital asset as a smallish, admittedly, income source for the foreseeable future. So, number 4. You can use your knowledge in ways that are no longer dependent on showing up for work physically like it was pretty recently. The work from home movement has seen to that. It means, for example, that I have in the last 2 years spent maybe 5 days at client sites in total while I run my one-person consultancy business. I've had contracts in London, Manchester, Cambridge. If you're not used to it already, you will be amazed by how liberating the world of work feels when you've a commute measured in seconds rather than hours. Yes, I know the business dinosaurs are bellowing that they want the physical presence of their staff in the office again, but it won't happen to any massive extent because the cost savings upside more than offsets the downside of lost co-working communications. Amongst the control freaks, I think that the call back to the office is only happening at all because if a business has signed a 10-year lease on a huge office block in, say, London or New York, it can be quite hard when you see tumbleweed blowing down the corridors. Number 5. In many industrialised economies, the impact of the boomer demographic bulge has meant that ageism is now against the law, and much more importantly, society's attitude is moving too. If you're capable of doing a job, age doesn't matter, and people are getting more and more used to seeing their colleagues with a few more wrinkles. That means that there are more opportunities to work for us as we get older. These are the positive reasons why it just doesn't make sense to stop work now. Also, I want to say one thing to the loads of people who've been waiting for years for the day when they can finally stop. All of these changes mean that if you want to, you can still leave work where you are currently if you've had enough. But you can still earn from your skills and knowledge and experience in many different ways, and a lot of them will be pretty enjoyable too. The options to work on your own terms have never been greater. Pulling all of this together, this is the very best time to not retire. We have a perfect storm of economic and financial insecurity on the downside, combined on the upside with more opportunity than ever before to earn money from your knowledge and experience. And this is happening in a society much more comfortable with age. Finally, technology has given us access, even as individuals, to a global market for our services. Now I'm going to be diving into the world of work and retirement a lot more on this channel. I'll be looking at practical ways to start and sharing some things that are working well already for many people, including those of us who aren't necessarily techies. Why not subscribe? See where it might lead you. Could just be very lucrative indeed.